set about building a program over the next sort of few months, which I guess in essence was almost my thesis on the mind and performance and physical health, which are the three pillars that set up the holistic nature of the program that is the nature of success.
On today's episode of the Surf Strong Show, we welcome back Taylor Knox, and joining us today is Matt Griggs. Together they run Nature of Success retreats, which we touch on today. I was lucky enough to be a part of their recent retreat in Salina Cruz, Mexico, and I can't speak highly enough of the experience it is, the way they run their retreats, how fulfilling it is, and on a personal note, one of the best surf trips I've ever been on, just for the pure fact that surfing wasn't the center and end all be all. We were lucky enough to get some great waves and some fun waves to play on, but having the personal development component, the meditation component, and the connection with an incredible group really made this trip special. I'd like to remind you to like, comment, subscribe to this and all of our episodes of the Surf Strong Show wherever you get your podcasts. For all show notes and links that we talk about in the episodes, you can go to surfstrongfit.com/podcast for this and all the past episodes. Thanks for joining us. It really means a lot. Let's get to our conversation with Matt Griggs and Taylor Knox.
How you doing, buddy?
Better now.
Time of day,
all different worldwide caffeine intake. Is that what we're doing here? Matt, can you give us a description of what Nature Success is all about?
It was born after my days on the world tour, where I was always interested in a holistic model of performance that was not only conducive of performing better, but just living better. And I'd spent all this time on tour. I'd spent all this time in pondering. I was, a few years into my meditation practice at that stage. I was spending a lot of time in nature, and it was really just an inspiration of being in nature a lot and wanting to bring some kind of philosophy and practicality of how to perform and live better. So I when I came off tour, I started coaching some executives just as a result of doing a few keynotes here and there. And I didn't really have a program. And then I set about building a program over the next sort of few months, which I guess in essence was almost my thesis on the mind and performance and physical health, which are the three pillars that set up the holistic nature of the program that is the nature of success. So it's based in those three pillars. And if you look at the title, nature means your intrinsic value, and our value in this world is really everything we understand. So it's helping people become more understanding as human beings, because problems go away where understanding appears, right? And then success, from the Latin, from the origin, just means to go on well or to go after. So we try to get people into a place where they have more self-awareness, where their mind is more understanding, get them clear on who they are, how they want to live, and then second to that, what is it they would like to achieve, and with their performance, within their craft, how do we develop their skill and their knowledge to be amazing at whatever it is they do, and be clear on where it is they want to go in terms of goals and their action points to get there. So it's a very thorough program, and that's what we're doing day to day when we're coaching people one-on-one, which is mostly executives, and what Taylor and I are also bringing with the tours and the retreats that we do in Maldives and Crescent Head in Australia and Mexico.
Yeah, that's really interesting. What's interesting about that too is, even if some of the core people that you're working with are at an executive level, the adaptation of that seems really universal. Like wherever you are on your path and whatever perhaps your background is, when you come to it at that point, it is about your performance. It's about your perspective. It's about where you want to go, which makes for a really interesting interaction, I would imagine, on some of the more in-person retreat things you're doing. Have, let's say, an executive level that is maybe on the front end of their surfing path, and have somebody that's maybe a little bit younger that doesn't have that exposure to the executive pressures and all that stuff, but is farther along in their surfing path. The struggles within surfing's a unifier, right? Both humbling and amazing. And having that divergence, I think, would make for a really interesting interactions and connections.
For sure. And it's a great metaphor too, right? Like, what a metaphor for life surfing is. So typically, in these retreats that we do, Taylor and I, they might be surf geeks, and they come for the surfing, but then they realize, right, Taylor, there's so much more that they can learn. And in those days, when Taylor and I were working together on tour, we I always tried to have a holistic model, because I kind of realized if there's any holes in the way we saw the world, or in our performance, it would show up in our performance. In those days, we looked at physical, technical, tactical, and psychological as the four sort of areas that set up this holistic understanding of performance that we would talk about, and when we were working together on the tour. And then they just naturally evolved into what is now the nature of success, into just three: state of mind, which Taylor and I have been practicing Kirti meditation for such a long time now. And it's been such a huge benefit to our life and everyone that we've shared it with. Physical health, because how far can you go in life if your mind and your physical energy isn't strong? And again, the performance side of things, whether it's surfing or whatever, and you hit the nail on the head. It's very universal, and that's why this program, the Nature of Success, has been so successful across every industry and every walk of life. It's humbling and crazy how successful it's been. And on any given day, I'm coaching anyone from a finance guy to a business owner to a tech dude to a it's the whole walk of life, because life is based in universal principles, and when you understand them, how it works naturally, you can work with them and start to get into this flow state of how you're performing and how you're living.
Yeah, I can't agree more. I mean, for the longest time in my career, I focused a lot on just the physical side of things. And if anything went wrong in the other areas of my life, I would just train harder, thinking that somehow doing more push-ups was going to get me out of this emotional baggage that I had, which did not work. And you get really, I mean, pain is a great motivator. And when you're in pain inside, you you feel like you have no hope and you have no one to turn to. You realize that, like, where I needed to turn was not to outside of me but inside of me. And I think that's the common denominator when we work with people. Like, what I've noticed is that we're not there to teach them about marketing. They're already really good at that, or accounting. They want to be they want to have a more balanced life. They want to be just as successful with their marriage as they are with their job, but one might be out of balance. So it's, I think for me, what I'm seeing with people is like them just coming to their own, just like realizing, like, oh, I have all the answers I'm looking for. I just haven't been able to access them.
Mhm.
And this is a way to access them.
What a great tool to have surfing as a facilitator for that. Again, complete divergent of experience, talent, all of those things within the ocean itself, but it's the equalizer. And we just talked about before how humbling it is. You can't be arrogant in the ocean. And the times that I've had interaction with, like, say, a high powered executive, and I've done some events where they're involved, and then but their exposure to the ocean is very limited, and they try to put this facade on of what they know really well, which is being in control, projecting power. It's just the role that they're more used to. It falls apart in the ocean because it doesn't take much for them to knock them down to the place where they're in this vulnerable place, which allows them to, of course, be open. And I don't want to overgeneralize, but it also opened up the ability to connect. At that point in my life, I was younger. Like, what did we have in common, or what did we perceive that we had in common? Very little. But that denominator through there just opened us up to where, like, we were just chatting like we were friends, and having surfing facilitate those things is just, it's such a wonderful experience. When you started coaching, Taylor, in the Nature of Success retreats, what was that learning like for you in the beginning? obviously you're an incredible surfer. Your experience, you've probably coached for countless years, just people around you and mentored you. But in that kind of setting, was that really unique for you?
Yeah, unique, and I was nervous. And I still get nervous. I really, I can't believe what I'm doing, because I always, when I had an oral test in high school, I would just take an F. I wouldn't do it just because I got so nervous. And I, the fact that I'm speaking in front of people is kind of funny, and ironic to me, but I guess it was in me, and I just never could access it.
Yeah.
Uh,
Personal
you know,
growth right there. Like it's your own personal growth for that.
I probably had like what I consider an embarrassing experience somewhere in school, and then like just shut it down.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of just trying to put that tool back in my tool belt.
Yeah.
I think I had it, and then at some experience, I took it out and threw it away, and now I went back into the trash, picked it back up, and put it back in my tool belt because I realized it's pretty useful. And and it's been just a great learning experience, because I'm learning so much from these guys, right? Because they are so high up in their field or whatever it is that they do. We've had anesthesiologists, we have a roofer, we have a construction person, we have a loan officer. I mean, we have all these different types of people, and our common ground obviously is starts at surfing. Coaching surfing for me is like I can do it with my eyes closed. It's so easy.
Yeah.
It's this stuff for me that's the challenge. Like Matt was, and when it comes to this stuff, he's the guy that's been on tour 20 years, and I'm like, the coach. That's like the roles are a little reversed, but we're learning from each other, and I'm learning. I'm getting there, and I'm pretty happy with it. Yeah, it's been fun.
So you're obviously coaching clients through the nature of success protocols and programs. Okay, and then someone says, "Oh, I absolutely want to go to a retreat." Is there any? They're obviously already working through what their goals are and what they're doing. Are they doing anything to prepare for the actual trip itself? I would imagine there'd be a big variance in uh, regular surfing, regular endurance being utilized. And are they preparing for the trip in a way, whether it's through the nature of success programs itself, or just preparing them to suddenly they're surfing 5 days in a row?
I think for anything, I think it just comes down. If they can't go surfing, I just try to tell them, like, go paddling.
Yeah.
Just paddle around, get in the ocean and paddle. Because the first thing, I think the hardest thing, or the place you get sore the most, is if you don't paddle for a long time. Those muscles, you want to have those switched on. The surfing part, once you're on the wave, feels like that is like riding a bike. You get that quicker than paddling a few hundred yards in a lineup.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and wherever people are, we just take them to the next level. So some people can be guilty of, and I'm sure everyone will resonate with this, is that, oh, I better be surfing good, because everyone's going to be watching, and that guy down there, Taylor Knox, one of their favorite surfers, is going to be watching. So they can, sometimes we sense this unnecessary pressure that people put on themselves, where obviously it's not that about that at all. Everyone just wants to have a good time, and wherever you are in your life and in your surfing, let's just go to the next level. Let's learn a lot. Let's have a great time, and let's get better. So that's the essence really of the trip, and we speak to each other in the lead up. So if anyone needs assistance with their quiver and stuff like that, then there's help there. But when we get there, it's like, okay, where we at, and let's get better. Let's keep moving this along.
Yeah. That ability to take the pressure off not only is conducive to enjoying the experience, but it also puts them in a better place to actually experience it and surf better. I mean, we all know as soon as we're like this, it's not going to turn out too well.
No, totally. Whether it's surfing, or again, surfing's that great metaphor for life, because some of my corporate clients can have stress or anxiety around, say, public speaking. To Taylor's earlier point, and if you imagine yourself going across the wave and there's stress, if there's too much energy in your body, which stress is going to create, there's going to be tension in the body, and that's going to block movement. If there's stress in the mind, it's also going to block articulation. So That's why it's so important to understand the mind and to get to a place where you can learn to be centered and learn to be relaxed, so you can access the best of your skill and knowledge. Because we hear this, like physical coordination all the time, which a generalized term of that would be proprioception. But you don't hear too many people talk about mental coordination, being able to center your thoughts and being able to stay centered mentally, which is what Akili does. It's a centering exercise, and being able to become centered in mind will bring out, being centered in the physical, whether it's with brain function in your articulation or in skill with something like surfing. Um, so I'm sure Taylor will attest to this. We grew up in a world like everyone where we're taught about reentries, we're taught about cutbacks, we're taught about how to win a heat, but no one really helped me when I was a professional surfer of how to deal with loss and how to deal with my anger issues and how to deal with feeling like a loser and how to feel like how bad I felt when I had to explain to everyone that I just lost a heat and I felt embarrassed and all this kind of stuff. Um, so if we're going to evolve as humans, we need to have this range of experience and we need to have this range of understanding that everything in life, it either helps us or it hinders us. So if we're going to use that as a basic principle, which it is, when that needs to shine through everything so we can start to feed everything that helps us and start to learn detachment, which is another process of Keely meditation. We can learn to detach from things that are hindering us in our experience of life.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a really well said, Matt. I think one of the things too that when it comes to like our our retreats is that what I see is, and it probably goes across all aspects of life, is people come and they start comparing themselves off what someone else is doing. So they get into this comparison based situation, and that never leads to a good place, within yourself. Like when you start comparing off someone else, and I'm sure that happens too at their job, and so to see people get through that, and in the first couple of days, we've seen people get kind of upset with their performance, or they want to go out and get tens on every wave, and by the end, they're like, "Wow, this isn't about that. You guys aren't going to like me more if I surf better. We're going to like
That's so true.
me."
Yeah. And it gets back to the mind too, right? Is that you how can you access your best if you're in a comparison mode or if you're stressed or if you're I don't know, you're so focused on how it looks, you're not focused on how it feels. And surfing's a feel sport. If you've got to be able to feel your balance. If you're going to connect to the wave, you've got to have that sensitivity and be able to feel the wave. And if you're more focused on how it looks, you're already blocked. So again, with what Taylor and I have learned over the years, from our mentor and through our experience of life, that the mind is 80% of our health, our energy, and also our performance. And so our program mirrors that, in how we teach people, even how we teach surfing technique. 80% of what we teach is actually in the mind, because if we get into comparison, if we get into adrenaline, if we get into expectations and putting pressure on ourselves, and uh, even just the ability to like, if you watch Taylor surf, he's such a good example of it. Very current esque, like, um, and I don't use that word lightly. That's a huge compliment to Taylor, but it's also a huge compliment to Tom that he's put in the same as Taylor, in my view, because I consider them both amazing at their craft. If you watch what Taylor and Tom's eyes are doing when they go across the wave, they're 20% of their attention is ahead, 80% where they are. That's the feeling of connection they have. And you'll see their eyes just go in front of the nose of the surfboard up to the lip. It's kind of a secondary thing. They're really connected where they are. So again, what a metaphor for life. If all your attention is up ahead when you're surfing or when you're living, you're ahead of yourself. You're surfing with impatience. And if your attention's ahead on the surfboard, you're probably going to be leaning on your front foot too much and bogging and missing the lip because you'll get stuck in the middle of the wave and race out to the face. So it's just another example of what's happening in the mind has the biggest effect on what's happening in life, whether it's surfing or performance in another job or another craft.
Yeah, it's that ability to exactly what you're doing. You're giving a percentage of balance of, something as over generalized as presence, but it really is everything. I think people ask me that don't surf, they'll say, well, why surfing? Like, try to explain that to me. And if I said, well, that's that's a big question, but it always comes down to that idea. Like, when something is happening in my life that I'm trying to process or work through or improve, it will always be better after a paddle. If I get waves, that's a bonus, but it's all just about that connection. And it comes down to that ability. The ocean just allows you so effectively to let something go, because you can't, there's so many circles moving at once. And if I want to be on this wave at this moment, I have to absolutely be right here. It just doesn't work otherwise. And that's what keeps me getting back in the ocean. Some days, as much as we love this thing, some days I'm talking myself out of it. Oh, I got to do this. I got to do that. I'm not, no, no, no. Go take 40 minutes, go take an hour and just paddle. And you're going to come back and be that much more effective at whatever you're trying to work through. That's what I try to center that. It's just be present in that moment. And surfing just provides that so effectively.
Yeah, I think it's just nature, right? It just feels good to be in nature. Whether it's a walk in the forest or paddle out, it's the person that is up hiking feels the same way as the person that's out surfing. It's where they go. Hopefully, they don't have their cell phone and you're not being connected, and they can actually be alone with their own thoughts.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not everyone is graced with having an ocean or having a beautiful forest to walk through. So this is just something that you can do wherever you are in the world, and it doesn't take an hour. You're not sitting in lotus position for an hour. You don't have to find a studio to do it. You don't need a teacher. It's all about you. You take it wherever you go, and it works as well as dedicated you are.
So kind of on that thought right there, and this is to both of you. Guys can take turns answering this. If you were, let's just say you were doing a small talk to, I don't know, freshmen at a university or graduating seniors at high school, and on this topic of trying to manage all of these things that we're presented with at various stages of life, and needing some real basic practical tools to click into, how would you convey that to them? What would you have them do? Two or three things. It can be breath work, it can be, trying to focus into initiating a meditation practice, whatever jumps out as you of starting to help this collection of young people trying to progress into their life. Like, what would be the top two or three things you would give them?
Matthew.
No pressure. No pressure.
I can go.
Well,
I
I
don't care.
would um, I would remind them that life's not easy. You know, if anything, it gets harder. So rather than get to a place where your experience of life and these challenges are making us stressed, um, why don't we get strong where we learn from these challenges and we grow from these challenges? And how do we develop a strong enough foundation that when we meet the experience of life, we don't get knocked from our center, we can rise to the occasion? Because I mean, history is littered with people that were very good at something they did, but they still experience stress or anxiety or depression or all these things. So for me, what the nature of success is about and what Taylor and I are trying to bring to the world with what we're doing with the program is, how do we find ourselves in the pursuit of success? How do we grow from all these experiences? How do we stay free in our mind, and not be so reliant on everything else um, to bring us happiness? Because if your happiness is conditional, then your state of mind and your happiness, it's going to go up and down with the conditions. So part of the initial pillar and part of the strongest foundation is our state of mind, and that's why we teach Keely meditation. because once you start to learn to become more primary pointed, where you learn to develop a good feeling inside of yourself that isn't reliant on anything else, now you have a very strong foundation. Um, this foundation is not only so strong because of that, but you also learn detachment, where in essence, detachment is an openness to life without being affected by it. Because you're going to have so many challenges come your way, like what's your strategy for having strength in your mind to deal with that? Um, because if somebody's really easily affected, we've got to be humble here and say maybe that's a weakness in my mind, and I need to look at that. So the practice of Kili meditation helps you learn detachment, where, as I said, in essence, it's an ability to be open to life without being affected by it. When you're not affected by something, not only can you access freedom, which is obviously lends to happiness and enjoyment, but it also helps you access perception because you've detached from cause and effect. You're not in this kind of up down yo yo experience of life where you're constantly going up and down. You have stability. In this case, stability of mind. What a great foundation. So from there, we talk a lot about self awareness as well, because that becomes another really strong foundation for living your life. Because not knowing yourself is a very weak foundation. To know this is about you. Taylor rides a wave different to how you ride a wave or how I ride a wave. It's not about fitting into some kind of formula outside. It's about finding your way. That means you need a bit of self study, know thyself, right? So that's the strongest foundation is this strength of mind and having a foundation of self awareness. Um, so we don't lose ourselves in the pursuit of success. You have this really strong foundation. And from there, then we just develop our craft, whatever your craft is, and make sure our physical energy is optimized in a way where you're just not limited in your experience of life. And isn't that a great feeling inside where you can express yourself with freedom? You can bring your best to any moment. And that's something to feel good about, because not only were you good at something with what you did, but more importantly, you just feel good about who you are. And that was what was missing in, I think, all of our upbringing. Is people, if they were good at what they did in terms of coaches, they can teach you how to be good at something, but I think we missed the point along the way. Like, how do we be good at being human? How do we be good at just being ourselves? So that's a big part of the process that we learn, via suffering, like most people do. And I'm not saying we've both got it figured out right now, but we're getting closer, aren't we?
Yeah, that was, yeah, we're getting close. As long as you're walking in the right direction. I mean, there's no such thing as a perfect person, right? And the greatest freedom you will ever have is self-responsibility.
Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting that part. Something really resonated though when you were saying that, Matt, which is you were talking about know thyself, and I definitely do not surf like Taylor Knox. No, will that ever happen? But
Not many
if
people can
I
say
just
that.
get a little bit better each time, I will feel better about myself.
Taylor's actually a really interesting person to study. We're going to geek out on surfing now, and one of my really good friends, who's actually quite a good surfer, actually, he made a comment a couple of years ago. He said when he watches pro surfers, Taylor's the one he likes to watch the most, because in a um, and this is, not obviously taking anything away from Taylor, but he said his surfing it feels more achievable, because Taylor's surfing is simple, but the simplicity is at a very elite level. So, a lot of his surfing is fundamentals. He goes fast and he does really hard rail turns, and the turns he does, an average surfer can semi access. They just can't do it to his level. So in that way, he's a really great person to study, because he's doing similar turns just at a higher level. So you can really watch his technique and learn a lot from it.
Yeah, well, it's a challenge. Like you said, it's not easy being a human. And being a good surfer, it just the great thing about surfing is that as you get older and your body gets older, you have to adjust everything, your training regimen, your diet, the way you look at surfing, how long you surf. There's just don't do anything the way I did it on tour. Like if I had my mind that I have now and I was to go back, I would have been much more successful and had a lot more happy years on tour, I would say, than I did. I think it first 10 years of my career, I was surfing for the not I wouldn't say the wrong reasons, but every reason I was surfing was a second point. I got caught up in, surfing for your contract or surfing for to make the tour or surfing for, and it wasn't until I dropped off tour in 98, I think, and had to requalify. And I took 2 months and I said, "Do you even like to do this anymore?" And after 2 months, I was like, yeah, actually, I do like to do this, and I want to can keep doing this as a job. And so I requalified and got back on tour another 10 years, but then I learned about the mind, and I was like, oh, okay, this is a whole nother level of not just happiness but fulfillment. I was fulfilled. I would say I was at the highest of the low point, but then I started entering into the higher point, which is the 75%. 25 was in the physical and I got a great result and it was, awesome. And all the people are patting you on the back and it's great. And then you walk away and you go home and you sleep in bed and you're alone and with your own thoughts. And you're like, am I stoked right now? I mean, I don't know. Like, and then you start leaning like, it doesn't matter. The trophy didn't make me much happier or mad or angrier than I was before. I still have the same issues, even though I have this great result. So I started working on the issues, which are all within me, primary point. And that's when I really started to enjoy surfing way more. And my surfing got better. People are saying, how do you stay like so relevant at such an, in your 50 and you're like, it's because I enjoy it now. And I'm not like, out there being hard on myself. I'm not comparing myself to others. Well, I still do. I still do. I'm not perfect. I like to be inspired by people like Mick when I go surf with him, but there will be times where I'm like, I'll compare myself and I'll be like, here I go again. And I'll get there. I'm not there fully. I'm not there 100%, but I'm definitely going in the right direction. And I think that's what makes growing older and surfing such a wonderful thing. If you don't become bitter and you don't become rigid, bitterness usually like goes into a rigid body and makes a rigid body. So if you get old and bitter, it's probably going to affect your muscles, I think,
Yeah.
in your reactionary time. You have to grow old, as they say, gracefully. But I think there's still so much untapped, and it's not through the physical, but through the mind on what you can do, even as a surfer. As you get older. I mean, I think we've seen some great examples of guys ripping at 60, but I think there's way better surfing to be done at 60 than anyone has ever seen.
Yeah, I agree, 100%. Yeah, yeah, and you're right, Taylor. Like, I mean, we've learnt it firsthand, but um, you consider like the mind's effect on the body. If the mind is rigid, so too will be the physical tissues. And if the mind's rigid, it obviously blocks movement in real time, but it can block the physical tissues in a way where they build up over time, and now we have a restriction of movement that more stretching and more push-ups isn't really going to help, because the problem isn't in the physical, it's in the mind. And if you look at how Taylor moves now, and even I'm 47, just turned 47 a few weeks ago, um, uh, I feel like my movement's getting better, but I'm probably stretching less. As I mean, Taylor can attest to. I used to train and stretch way more, 10, 20 years ago, and I was, admittingly rigid with it, because I thought that was everything. I need to train more. I need to do this more to feel good. But most of the feeling good is in the mind. And now I've realized it's just about balance, and a good training program should really mirror that 80-20 principle, 80% in the mind, 20% in the physical. If you can get both the mind and body strong, the mind-body connection, what does that look like in your life, not just in your surfing? I say this a lot when I'm working with sporting organizations too, is, like most people seem to agree with that. That 80% of your health, your energy, your performance is in your state of mind, and 20% everything else. I'll go, yeah, for sure. And so does your training mirror that? And most people, it does not. Very far from it. So with what Taylor and I are doing with the Nature of Success, it absolutely mirrors that. And we get into some very interesting conversations with people, and particularly in the Maldives trips now, because the Maldives has become an invitational thing where everyone that comes has been doing the Keely meditation for a long time. So Taylor and I can go to more of our range. So they become very interesting. But every trip is. So, there's Crescent and there's Mexico, and there's this masterclass that's coming up in California that we can teach the basic principles and start to develop a foundation to move forward of greater freedom and health and happiness and enjoyment of life. And that's important. This is our life, right? Let's live it well.
What's powerful about that, back to the 80-20 concept, and what Taylor was describing of moving through these different points of your life, and surfing can get better, and what's possible in our 60s to surf at that. What that all really is portraying and projecting is adaptation, right? The ability to adapt to what is coming at you, whether it's physical, whether it's a life change. If you have that strength, if you will, or awareness of where you are, you're able to adapt and use that presence and tools to overcome that, grow past it, and then progress from that point again, as opposed to that thing just knocking you so off track. Say it's just a physical injury. That physical injury now is part of your equation. Now, if you have the being resolute in your mind and that strength and that practice, allow your body to heal, do the things you have to do within that, but that presence and strength in your mind to then grow from that point, it's just always there for you. It's a tool that, you're right, the stronger that is, the more aware you are of that, the better all the other pieces that you have to deal with are going to be. It's just extremely powerful.
Yeah, a lot of people, they fragment everything. They'll put physical, exercise over here, and they'll put, relationships over here, job over here. And they all should be able to kind of coexist harmoniously. But a lot of times you have one area of your life that's a little bit suffering, and you kind of just don't look at it, and you keep just focusing on your hobby and your job. And then all of a sudden it gets to a breaking point, maybe in a relationship, where you're like, well, the warning signs have been here for like a couple years, and I've just chosen not to look at them or distract myself with something else. So for me, I think for surfing, and what made my surfing better was I used to use surfing as an escape. And when things were not going my way, or there was getting really frustrating, I would just go out surfing. It was like I got away from it. But then you can't surf for 24 hours a day, can you? So you got to come back to the beach at some point and go home. So
Even a pro surfer can't surf 24 hours a day.
so what you learn is that you're like, wow, okay, like if when I can take care of this area that I've neglected for a while, actually give it some attention and take some a little bit away from my hobby. My hobby, even though I wasn't doing it as long, got a lot better. Like my focus and my craft. I thought more hours in the water meant you're a better surfer. And what I learned was, no, just whatever time you do get to spend in the water, be focused and be present. And you can work on, like, you just need a few waves. You don't need a few hours. You just need a few waves.
Yeah.
And you can get out of the water. Um, Maybe you did one thing right on a bottom turn, like on two waves. Great. You went in, you remember the feeling, instead of going out there and catching 30 waves, and the whole session was kind of just a big mess, and you were frustrated with the crowd, and you don't remember getting a good one. It's just all about appreciation, I think, when it
Yeah.
comes to to where you are in life. It's having appreciation, because if you don't have appreciation for a little, you're not going to have an appreciation for a lot.
Yeah, that's
So
well said.
true. Yeah, you think about the feeling of it all, like that. To improve, back to your earlier point, Greg, about adaptation, success happens when a good idea is turned into a good action, or a pure idea is goes into an action. It starts as an idea success, but it's understood through action. So again, it's not about, if you just surf for 3 or 4 hours, you're going to get tired, and as soon as you get tired, you're just going to revolt to habits. Because something I learned as a coach a long time ago: whatever you train, you get better at. So be careful what you train, because that works for both good and bad. Um, for example, over Christmas, people get a lot better at drinking, right, and eating bad food. So um, train with purpose. What is it you would like to get better at, and what is it you would actually like to get worse at? Like, that's a pretty good question, and most people don't consider that. Like, what are you not going to do today, or how do you not want to be? And for very successful people, whether they're leaders in business or in surfing, it's not just what Taylor does that makes him a really good surfer, it's what he does not do. When was the last time you saw him pump, or double stage a bottom turn or a cutback? He doesn't do that sort of stuff. But people don't really consider what you don't do is important, and they're things for everyone to consider that are listening to this. How do I want to be? And this is what governs performance. It's not just your behaviors, which is what you're doing, but it's underpinning it, your state of mind, how you're being. So how would you like your life to feel? How do you want to be in this world? And then what is it you would like to do? And how do we get better at both? And if it's a surfing, like Taylor said, rather than surfing for 2 or 3 hours, you're better off going in like, what is it I would like to work on today? And go in with a task, and give yourself feedback on that. If you've got someone like Taylor to watch, that's just, bonus points, because he sees things that they probably don't see. And now you're getting feedback, and that translates to new ideas, and those new ideas can turn into new actions, and that's where we get adaptation and success. That's when we get people moving forward. If you're not really pondering on where your improvement's coming from, you tend to just keep repeating the same, which gets us to this place that I talked about a little while ago, called terminal mediocrity, where you just stop improving, and we've stopped living, right? If we've stopped learning, and if we've stopped improving. And for me, that's part of the whole nature of success thing too. It is natural, it's innate and intrinsic in us all, just to want to grow. And we get hopefully everyone gets a say in that, because you don't want to grow because of how the world's making you, and how you're reacting off everything else. Let's have a strong foundation of knowing thyself, and having a strong mind, where um, you are really plugged in mentally to this natural growth, but you have your own free will, where you're surfing the way you would like to surf, and you're living the way you would like to surf, and you respect that in other people too. You're just being yourself, and you're allowing other people to do the same thing. And for me, again, that metaphor of surfing is so good, because while there's some, and Taylor and I teach this a lot, there's some basic principles that govern good technique, you know, but there's still so much room for self-expression. So how Taylor rides a wave is different to how Mick rides a wave. There's some similarities in their technique for sure, which is another compliment to Taylor, because that's Mick's favorite surfer. But how they compete and how they strategize in the heat is so different, because they're just different people. And to Taylor's earlier point, if Taylor gets caught up in comparing himself to Mick and tries to strategize like Mick, it's not going to work, is it, brother?
No. No. I think that's one of the greatest things about the nature of success is it sort of asks you some really good questions, but you answer it in your own words, because everyone in life is going to have a different puzzle piece configuration of what means harmony in their life, or what's going to bring happiness to them. It's not going to be the same recipe for every person. So this, people, they get to write stuff down, and then I go, look at what you wrote down. I didn't write that down. I didn't give you one of those words. Those all came out of your mouth. And you're basically telling me how you would like to be. And now let's just get you there.
Yeah. This is the mistake I think for coaches too is um, they tell the student, whether it's in surfing or anywhere, what they need to do. And sometimes my thought is, does anyone ever ask you how you would like to surf? Or does anyone ever ask you how you would like to live? Wouldn't that be a better way to coach where you ask really good questions and you can teach and impart really good basic principles and universal understandings? But for me, the art of coaching is you impart this sort of wisdom, but without interfering with their free will, without interfering with their own uh, foundation. You get to decide, like Taylor said. So, I mean, how many issues do people have just because you've been told what to do your whole life, right? Uh, and it's usually from people that don't know what they're doing. So,
That's true. And then you collect all these belief systems that don't work for you. And so I think it's more about not what you gain in life, but really what you lose. You want to lose all the things that haven't been working for you.
amen. Yeah.
And sometimes it's also about this concept of support and collaboration. Like I know in my own coaching, what I say to the surfers that I coach, like early on, is there'll be times when we'll do a check-in and you'll come and you'll have a question about A, B, or C. What do you think about this? I'm having some tightness in my shoulder. What do you think about this? And I say to them, often my response is going to be, well, what do you think? What do you think about it? Because we come with some expertise and experience and background, and we bring that resource to them. But I say to them, nobody knows your body better than you. You live with it literally your whole life. So what do you think? And then we come together. And not what I've found so powerful about that is, one, their own instincts are validated and come up to this place where they think like, well, you're the expert and you know more. And they come together with this reinforcement of like, that's great, I think you should do that, I think you should also think about this. And then it makes this really powerful collaboration. And so they take ownership of the action that they know they need to do to progress or improve. It comes from their own point of view and perspective. And I think that resonates in almost anything, but specifically within their own body and their movement, it's just really powerful.
I think it's always more powerful to be asked the right question than be told what to do.
Absolutely. So there we have some amazing opportunities coming up to learn and to interact directly with Matt and Taylor. All of their Nature of Success programs, the retreats coming up. They do them multiple times a year in different locations. We will have that direct link on the episode as we put it up. But if you search Nature of Success, it comes right up, and all those events are there. We also have a masterclass, a movement and mind masterclass that's coming up pretty soon. I think there's only a handful of spots left on that. I'll also have that link up. What's wonderful about that, though, is it will also live in a streaming capacity after that has unlimited. And what we're really looking to do is to build opportunities to learn and teach in a group. Matt and Taylor are close friends that have built this amazing thing. Michael Rentala, Dr. Tim Brown, there's just some amazing minds coming together to provide opportunities to learn directly from them, learn together. So I'll have that link, search that out. It's been a wonderful experience and opportunity to be around these great minds and the work that they're doing. If you have an opportunity to be in person or to learn from them in the streaming environment, do it. You will not regret it. It's a wonderful experience. So thanks you guys so much for taking the time. And I look forward to seeing you live in a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
Sounds good, Greg.
Very cool.
Sounds good, Greg. Thanks for having us, brother.
Yeah, thanks, Greg. Appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you for joining us on the Surf Strong Show. To find out more about working with me directly on your surf fitness, go to surfstrongfit.com/programs and we'll set up a time to chat. I'm your host, Greg Finch. I'd like to remind you to like, comment, subscribe to this and all of our episodes of the Surf Strong Show wherever you get your podcasts. For all show notes and links that we talk about in the episodes, videos of the podcast, you can go to surfstrongfit.com/podcast for this and all the past episodes. Thanks for joining us. It really means a lot.